The letter arrived 3 weeks after Emily Carter died. Ethan Blackwood, the Alpha King of Blackthorn Keep, stared at the sealed envelope as though it had crossed the kingdom carrying a warning meant only for him. His name was written across the front in the handwriting he had once known better than his own. No royal title. No formal greeting. Just Ethan. He did not open it immediately. For 6 years, he had convinced himself that Emily had left because she no longer wanted anything to do with him. He had accepted that explanation because it was easier than remembering the night he had rejected his mate. Easier than remembering her quiet expression when she realized he believed the accusations against her. Easier than wondering what she had tried to say before walking away from the palace. Now she was gone, and the letter was the first thing she had left that could still speak to him. Ethan finally broke the seal. The first lines were simple. She thanked him for the good memories. She asked him not to blame himself for everything. Then, halfway down the page, his eyes stopped. You have a son. Ethan read the sentence again. Then once more. The room seemed suddenly too quiet. Outside the tall windows, winter rain traced slow lines down the glass while the great halls of Blackthorn Keep carried on with their usual rhythm. Servants crossed corridors. Guards changed shifts. Council members waited for the Alpha King's attention. None of them knew that the man seated behind the royal desk had just discovered that his entire understanding of the past 6 years was wrong. His hand tightened around the letter. A son. 6 years old. Emily had known. She had raised him without Ethan. But why? The next line gave him no answer. Instead, Emily had written only, his name is Noah. He has your eyes. Ethan lowered the letter and stared into the empty room. For the first time, the crown on his head felt heavier than it ever had before. He remembered Emily standing in the council chamber 6 years earlier, asking him to believe her. He remembered looking away because the evidence against her had seemed convincing. He remembered the silence that followed his rejection. What he did not remember was seeing her again. And now, suddenly, that absence felt impossible. If Emily had a child, she had known exactly who the father was. If Noah had his eyes, then there was only one answer Ethan could accept. But one question remained, and it frightened him more than the truth itself. Why had Emily never told him? He looked down at the final lines of the letter. They were shorter than the rest. I tried to come back. Ethan's breath caught. Beneath those words was a date. 6 years ago. The same week he had believed she had disappeared forever. He slowly folded the letter, but his hands were no longer steady. Somewhere beyond the palace walls lived a 6-year-old boy who had grown up without knowing his father. And somewhere in the past was the reason Emily had never been allowed to tell him. Ethan rose from his chair and looked toward the darkening sky. For 6 years, he had believed he was the one who had been abandoned. Now he understood something far more painful. Perhaps Emily had been trying to come home all along. The next morning, Ethan left Blackthorn Keep before sunrise. He told the council only that he had royal business in Silver Creek, but the truth was far more personal. For the first time in 6 years, he was not traveling as a king searching for answers about his kingdom. He was traveling as a father searching for his son. The road south stretched through quiet forests and open fields still silvered by morning frost. Ethan barely noticed the scenery. Emily's final words remained in his mind. I tried to come back. If she had truly returned 6 years ago, then someone had made certain he never knew. And if that person had succeeded, they had also kept him from knowing Noah. By late afternoon, Ethan reached Silver Creek. The town was smaller than he remembered, filled with wooden storefronts, quiet homes, and narrow roads lined with old trees. He followed the address written beneath Noah's name until he reached a modest cottage at the edge of town. Ethan stopped before the gate. A small blue wagon rested near the porch. A child's boots sat beside the door. Through the window, he saw a young boy sitting at a table, reading a book. Ethan. could not move. The boy had dark brown hair and clear blue eyes. 6 years old. Just as Emily had written. Then the boy looked toward the window. Their eyes met. For one suspended moment, Ethan felt the weight of 6 missing years settle between them. The boy did not know who he was. He simply watched the unfamiliar man standing outside. A woman from the neighboring cottage stepped onto her porch and recognized Ethan's royal carriage. She hurried toward the gate, her expression cautious. "You are the Alpha King," she said softly. Ethan nodded. His voice almost failed him. "I am looking for Noah." The woman glanced toward the cottage. "He lives there." Ethan looked back at the boy. "His mother raised him here." The woman lowered her eyes. Emily did. Hearing her name in that quiet place felt different from seeing it in a royal archive. Here, Emily was not a scandal, a rejected mate, or a name attached to an old accusation. She was the woman who had built a home, raised a child, and somehow carried a secret alone. Ethan swallowed. "Did she ever speak about me?" The woman hesitated before answering. "She said you were once the person she trusted most." Ethan looked toward Noah again. "And after that?" "She said some things were easier to survive than others." The words stayed with him. Before Ethan could ask anything more, the cottage door opened. Noah stepped outside holding his blue book. He looked at Ethan with innocent curiosity. "Are you the man from the palace?" Ethan slowly nodded. "Yes." Noah studied him for another moment. Then his eyes moved to the royal crest on Ethan's coat. "My mother had one like that." Ethan's heart tightened. "She did?" Noah nodded. "She kept it in a little wooden box." Ethan stared at the boy, suddenly aware that Emily had carried pieces of their past into this small home. Pieces she had never thrown away. Noah took one small step closer. "Did you know my mother?" Ethan looked into the eyes that were unmistakably his own. For 6 years, he had imagined what his child might look like. He had never imagined hearing that question from the child himself. "Yes," Ethan whispered. "I knew her." Noah waited. "Were you her friend?" Ethan looked down at the letter still folded inside his coat. The answer he had spent 6 years avoiding was finally standing directly in front of him. "No," he said quietly. "I was someone who should have listened to her." The following morning, Ethan woke before the sun had fully risen over Silver Creek. He had spent the night at a small inn near the center of town, but sleep had never really come. Noah's question remained with him. "Were you her friend?" Ethan had answered honestly, but honesty had not made the truth easier to carry. By breakfast, he had made one decision. He would not take Noah anywhere until he understood what Emily had wanted for her son. He returned to the cottage just after 8. Noah was sitting on the porch with his blue book open across his knees. When he saw Ethan, he looked up with the same quiet curiosity. "You came back." Ethan smiled faintly. "I said I would." Noah closed the book. "My mother always said promises mattered." Ethan felt the words settle heavily in his chest. She was right. They spent the morning walking through the small town together. Noah showed Ethan the creek, the old oak tree where he liked to read, and a small bakery where Emily used to buy warm bread every Saturday. Ethan listened to every detail. He wanted to know all the ordinary things he had missed. By afternoon, the town healer, Mrs. Harper, arrived at the cottage carrying a small leather case. She had cared for Emily during her final months, and when she saw Ethan, her expression softened with understanding. "She knew you would come eventually," Mrs. Harper said. Ethan looked at her sharply. "She expected me?" "Not because she believed you would find her," the healer replied. "Because she hoped you would find Noah." Ethan glanced toward the boy playing quietly in the garden. "Why did she never tell me about him?" Mrs. Harper hesitated. "She tried." The answer felt like a door opening. Ethan stepped closer. How many times? More than once. Mrs. Harper reached into her case and removed a small sealed envelope. Emily asked me to keep this until you came looking for your son. Ethan stared at the envelope. His name was written across it. The handwriting was unmistakable. He opened it carefully. Inside was a short note and a medical record from the year Noah was born. Ethan read the first line, then stopped. His eyes moved slowly across the page. The healer watched him in silence. Is it true? Ethan asked. Mrs. Harper nodded. Noah is your son. The words should have shocked him, but they did not. Somewhere inside, Ethan had known since the moment he saw the boy's eyes. What shook him was the next line. The record showed that Emily had returned to Blackthorn Keep shortly before Noah was born. She had come seeking Ethan. Ethan looked up. Why did nobody tell me? Mrs. Harper's expression became sad. That is what you need to discover. Ethan folded the record carefully. Across the garden, Noah laughed at something only he could see. Ethan watched him for a long moment. 6 years. 6 birthdays. 6 years of first words, first steps, winter mornings, and quiet nights that Ethan had never witnessed. Then Mrs. Harper spoke again. There is something else. Ethan turned. What? She looked toward the cottage. Emily did not leave the palace because she wanted to disappear. Someone made her believe the king had refused to see her. Ethan's face became still. For the first time, the mystery had a name waiting to be found. And somewhere inside Blackthorn Keep, someone had known the truth all along. The words followed Ethan all the way back to Blackthorn Keep. Someone had made Emily believe the Alpha King refused to see her. Someone had stood between a mother and the man she had once trusted most. By the time Ethan entered the palace, the warmth of the great hall felt strangely distant. He went directly to the royal archives, where records from 6 years earlier were kept in locked cabinets. The archivist bowed when Ethan entered, but the Alpha King did not return the greeting. I need every record concerning Emily Carter, he said. Every letter, every visitor request, every message sent to my office during the year Noah was born. The archivist hesitated. Your Majesty, some of those records were sealed under the previous council. Ethan looked directly at him. Then unseal them. Within an hour, a stack of old documents covered the table. Ethan searched through them one by one. Most were routine requests from nobles and regional leaders. Then he found Emily's name. His hand stopped. The first document was a visitor request dated 6 years earlier. Emily Carter had arrived at the Eastern Gate and requested a private meeting with the Alpha King. The request had been denied. Ethan stared at the signature beneath the denial. Marcus Hale. His chief advisor. He opened another record. Emily had returned 2 weeks later. Again, her request had been denied. Again, Marcus had signed it. Ethan's breathing slowed. There was a third request. Then a fourth. Each one carried the same official response. The Alpha King was unavailable. Do not allow further contact. Ethan sat back, unable to speak. For 6 years, he had believed Emily had chosen to leave. But the records told another story. She had tried to return again and again. Someone had made sure she never reached him. A sound behind him made Ethan turn. Marcus Hale stood in the doorway. The older man wore his usual dark court coat, his expression controlled and respectful. Your Majesty, Marcus said. Ethan placed the documents on the table. You signed these. Marcus glanced at them. I handled many royal matters during that period. You denied her every request. Marcus remained silent. Ethan picked up the first letter. Why? Marcus finally answered, because I believed I was protecting the kingdom. Ethan's eyes narrowed. From Emily? From uncertainty. Marcus took a slow breath. The court was already divided. Your bond with her had become a source of concern. I believed distance would prevent further instability. Ethan looked at him for several seconds. She was carrying my child. Marcus lowered his eyes. I did not know that at the time. Ethan knew there was more. He could feel it in the careful pauses between Marcus's words. He reached for another document and noticed something strange. One of Emily's letters had been marked as delivered. But there was no signature confirming receipt. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a single unfinished page in Emily's handwriting. The first sentence was enough to change everything. Ethan, I came back because I needed you to know about our baby. He stared at the page. Marcus said nothing. Ethan slowly raised his eyes. How many of her letters did you keep from me? For the first time, Marcus had no immediate answer. And Ethan realized the truth was much larger than a single rejected request. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. The question remained between him and Marcus like a door neither man wanted to open. How many? Ethan asked again. Marcus looked toward the shelves of royal records. 3, he finally said. Ethan's expression changed. You said you did not know about the child. I did not know at first. Marcus's voice remained controlled. But after Emily returned, I understood that something had changed. Ethan reached for another document. It was a visitor record from the Eastern Gate, dated only days before Noah was born. Emily had arrived carrying a small travel bag. She had requested to see Ethan privately. The request had been denied. Beneath it was a handwritten note. She knows too much. Keep her away from the king. Ethan read the sentence twice. Who wrote this? Marcus did not answer. Ethan turned the page and found a second note attached to another letter. Do not deliver. The king must not be disturbed. You made decisions in my name, Ethan said quietly. Marcus lowered his gaze. I believed I was protecting the throne. You were protecting a lie. The words were calm, but they carried more weight than anger. Marcus finally admitted that he had feared Emily's return would create uncertainty within the court. He claimed that rumors about their bond had already divided several noble families, and he believed separating them would preserve stability. But Ethan was no longer listening to excuses. He was reading Emily's words. The first letter had been written before Noah was born. Emily told Ethan she was frightened, confused, and hopeful. She said she did not want a crown. She wanted him to know that their child was coming. She had even written the date when she planned to return. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. She had not disappeared. She had been trying to reach him. And he had never known. When he opened his eyes, Marcus was still standing across the room. There is more, Ethan said. Marcus remained silent. Ethan lifted a thin bundle of papers tied with faded blue ribbon. The ribbon had been wrapped around 5 letters. 5. Each one carried Emily's handwriting. Each one had been marked with the same instruction, hold for royal review. Ethan's fingers trembled as he untied the ribbon. He opened the first letter. Emily wrote about Noah's birth. The second described his first winter. The third mentioned that Noah had begun asking questions about his father. The fourth was shorter. She wrote that she had become tired of waiting for an answer that never came. Ethan's chest tightened. Then he opened the fifth. The page was dated only days before her death. His eyes moved across the first line, and everything inside him went still. Ethan, if this letter has finally reached you, then you know about our son. Please do not search for me. Search for him. He read the sentence again. Emily had known she might not have much time left. Yet even then, she had not asked Ethan to come back for her. She had asked him to come back for Noah. At the bottom of the page was one final sentence. He deserves a father who chooses him, even if I am no longer here to ask you. Ethan lowered the letter. The room was silent. Marcus had no answer. Ethan looked toward the palace windows, where evening light was fading over the kingdom. 6 years ago, he had rejected the woman he loved because he believed a lie. Now, at last, he understood what her final letter had truly given him. Not a second chance with Emily. A final chance to become the father their son had been waiting for. The letter did not ask Ethan to come back for Emily. It asked him to become the father Noah had never known. He read those words again in the quiet of his study, long after Marcus had left the room. The final sentence remained in his mind. He deserves a father who chooses him. Ethan folded the letter carefully and placed it inside his coat. Then he walked away from the royal desk, leaving the crown behind for the first time in years without worrying who might notice. By sunrise, he was already on the road to Silver Creek. The journey felt different this time. He was not searching for evidence. He was not searching for someone to blame. He was going to see his son. When Ethan reached the cottage, Noah was sitting beneath the old oak tree with his blue book open across his knees. He looked up as Ethan approached. "You came back." Ethan smiled. "I told you I would." Noah closed his book. "Did you find out why my mother left?" Ethan sat beside him, leaving enough space for the boy to choose whether to come closer. "I found out that she tried to come back." Noah's eyes lowered. "She told me she tried." Ethan's chest tightened. "You knew?" Noah nodded. "She said your father was a king, but kings have many responsibilities." Ethan looked at him carefully. "Did she ever say she was angry with me?" Noah shook his head. "No. She said you did not know the truth." Those words hurt more than any accusation could have. Emily had protected his name even after he had failed her. Ethan reached into his coat and took out the final letter. "Your mother left this for me." Noah looked at the envelope. "What does it say?" Ethan hesitated. He could have kept the hardest parts private. Instead, he decided Noah deserved honesty. "She said you deserve a father who chooses you." Noah was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Do you choose me?" Ethan felt his throat tighten. There was no royal answer for a question like that. No council could decide it. No crown could make it easier. He simply looked at the boy and said, "Yes. I do." Noah slowly moved closer until his shoulder rested against Ethan's arm. Ethan stayed still, afraid that even the smallest movement might break the moment. They sat beneath the oak tree while morning light spread across the grass. For the first time, Ethan understood what Emily had been asking of him. She had not wanted him to repair the past with promises. She wanted him to show up for the future. Ethan looked toward the cottage window. Emily had lived here, written here, waited here, and raised their son here. He could never give her back the years she had lost. But he could honor the choice she had made. Before leaving that morning, Ethan made one final promise. He would return to Blackthorn Keep, uncover the complete truth, and tell the kingdom what had happened. Not to defend his pride. Not to protect his throne. But because Emily's name deserved the truth, and Noah deserved to know that his father had finally chosen him. Ethan stood and offered Noah his hand. The boy took it. Together, they walked toward the cottage. Behind them, the old oak tree stood quietly in the morning light, holding the first moment of a family that had finally begun to find its way home. By the time Ethan returned to Blackthorn Keep, he was no longer willing to let the past remain buried. Noah had given him something the crown never could, a reason to tell the truth. The royal council gathered that afternoon, expecting another routine meeting, but Ethan entered the chamber carrying Emily's letters in his hands. Marcus Hale stood among the advisors, his expression carefully composed. Ethan took his place at the head of the table and looked around the room. 6 years ago, you were told that Emily Carter abandoned the palace, he said. That was a lie. The room became silent. Ethan placed the first visitor request on the table. Then another. Then another. Each document showed that Emily had returned to Blackthorn Keep and asked to see him. Each request had been denied. Murmurs moved through the council. Marcus remained still. Ethan continued. She tried to tell me about our child. Her letters were never delivered. One council member looked toward Marcus. Is this true? Marcus finally spoke. I made decisions during a difficult period. I believed I was protecting the stability of the kingdom. Ethan's voice remained calm. You were protecting a decision I never made. He placed Emily's final letter beside the other documents. She was my mate. She was carrying my son. She came back because she believed I would listen. Marcus lowered his eyes. I believed you would reject her again. Ethan paused. The words revealed something important. Marcus had not simply hidden information. He had made a choice on Ethan's behalf. And Emily had lived with the consequences of that choice. Ethan looked toward the council. I rejected her once. I will not allow anyone else to rewrite what happened after that. The council members read the documents in silence. One by one, the old accusations against Emily began to collapse. There had never been proof that she betrayed Ethan. There had only been missing letters, denied requests, and a story repeated until everyone accepted it as truth. Ethan stood slowly. Her name will be restored in the royal archives. No one objected. Every record concerning her will be corrected. Still, no one spoke. Then Ethan looked directly at Marcus. And every decision made in my name without my knowledge will be reviewed. Marcus lowered his head. The confrontation ended without shouting, but the weight of the truth was unmistakable. 6 years of silence had finally been broken. Later that evening, Ethan stood alone beside the palace window with Emily's final letter in his hand. He looked toward the road leading south, toward Silver Creek and Noah. The kingdom now knew the truth. But Ethan understood that public recognition was only the beginning. Noah did not need a king who could restore his mother's name. He needed a father who would keep choosing him when no one was watching. Ethan folded the letter carefully and placed it inside his coat. Then he turned away from the window. For the first time, he was not returning to his throne because he was the Alpha King. He was returning to the road because he was Noah's father. The road to Silver Creek felt shorter this time. Ethan had no counsel waiting for him, no documents beneath his arm, and no reason to prove anything to anyone. He was simply returning to the boy who had asked him one question that he could never forget. Do you choose me? When Ethan reached the cottage, the evening sun was already sinking behind the trees. Noah was sitting on the porch, turning the pages of his blue book. He looked up and smiled when he saw Ethan. You came back again. Ethan nodded. I told you I would. Noah closed the book and studied him. Did the kingdom know about my mother? Ethan sat beside him. They know the truth now. Noah was quiet. What happens to her? Ethan looked toward the garden. Her name will be remembered for who she really was. Noah seemed to think about that. She always said she did not need everyone to understand her. Ethan lowered his eyes. She deserved to be understood by me. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Noah asked the question Ethan had been expecting since the day they met. Do I have to go live in the palace? Ethan smiled gently. Only if you want to. Noah looked surprised. But you are the king. I am. And kings have rules. Ethan nodded. They do. Noah considered this carefully. Can I still come here? Ethan looked around the cottage, remembering Emily's books, her flowers, and the small room where she had raised their son. As often as you want. Noah smiled. Then maybe I will go sometimes. Ethan laughed softly. It was the first time Noah had heard that sound from him. The next morning, Ethan and Noah walked through Silver Creek together. Ethan did not introduce him as an heir. He did not speak about succession or royal expectations. He let Noah choose where they went. They visited the bakery Emily used to visit every Saturday. They stopped beside the creek. Noah showed Ethan the old oak tree where he liked to read. At each place, Ethan listened as though every small detail mattered. And it did. These were the years he could never recover. But he could learn them now. Before sunset, they returned to the cottage. Noah found one of Emily's old notebooks on a shelf and carried it to Ethan. She wrote in this sometimes. Ethan opened it carefully. Most pages contained ordinary things. Grocery lists. Weather notes. Small reminders about Noah's school lessons. Then he found one sentence written in the margin of a page. I hope one day he knows that his father was never the enemy. Ethan closed the notebook and looked away for a moment. Emily had still protected him. Even after everything. Noah watched his face. Are you sad? Ethan nodded. A little. Because of my mother. Because I wish I had listened sooner. Noah reached for his hand. Ethan looked down at their joined hands and felt something inside him finally settle. He could not change the night he rejected Emily. He could not give her back the years she had spent waiting. But he could. Stop making the same mistake. He could listen. He could stay. He could be there for Noah when the days were ordinary and when they were difficult. As twilight settled over Silver Creek, Ethan and Noah stood together outside the cottage. The palace waited miles away, but Ethan did not feel the need to rush back. For once, the crown could wait. His son could not. 1 year later, the moon garden was brighter than Ethan remembered. White flowers covered the paths surrounding the old stone bench, and evening sunlight rested softly over the palace grounds. Noah stood beside the garden gate holding a small blue book against his chest. He was 7 now, taller than he had been when Ethan first found him in Silver Creek, but there was still something familiar in the way he looked at the world. Ethan walked beside him, no crown on his head, no counsel waiting nearby, only the quiet presence of a father who had finally learned to stay. Noah carried a single white flower in his hand. He walked toward the garden and placed it beneath the tree where a small memorial had been created for Emily. Ethan watched in silence. Her name was now restored in the royal archives. The old accusations were gone. The records had been corrected. Anyone who entered the palace history room could now read the truth about her life. Emily Carter had never abandoned the Alpha King. She had tried to return. She had tried to tell him about their son. And when she realized she might not have enough time left, she had chosen to leave behind forgiveness instead of bitterness. Noah looked up at Ethan. Do you think Mom would like this garden? Ethan smiled softly. I think she would. Noah looked at the flowers. She loved white roses. Ethan nodded. I know. They stood together beneath the fading sunlight. Ethan reached into his coat and took out the final letter. He had carried it for an entire year, but he had never allowed himself to forget its words. He read the first line silently, then looked at Noah. Your mother wanted you to know something. Noah waited. She wanted you to know that you were loved before you were ever born. Noah looked toward the flowers. I know. Ethan's voice softened. She also wanted me to become the father you deserved. Noah smiled. You are trying. Ethan laughed quietly. I am. The boy slipped his hand into Ethan's. They began walking through the garden as the first stars appeared above the palace. Ethan knew there would always be a part of his life that belonged to regret. He could never return to the night he rejected Emily. He could never give her back the years she had spent raising Noah without him. He could never hear her voice again. But he had finally understood the meaning behind her final gift. She had not left him a secret so he could mourn what he had lost. She had left him a son so he could learn how to love differently. At the edge of the garden, Noah stopped and looked back at the flowers. Ethan waited beside him. "Are we going home?" Noah asked. Ethan looked toward the palace, then toward the road leading to Silver Creek. "Yes," he said. "But you can choose which way." Noah smiled and took his hand. Together, they walked beneath the evening sky. Behind them, the moon garden remained peaceful in the fading light, holding the memory of a woman whose final letter had changed a king. Ahead of them was a future she would never see, but one Ethan intended to protect with every ordinary day he had left. The crown had once been the most important thing in his life. Now he understood something Emily had known all along. A kingdom could be inherited. A title could be given. But the chance to be a father had to be chosen.